It's spring week 4 in Apothecaria, and the village doctor, Dr. Cornelius McTwitter, learns the hard way: don't interrupt necromancers. Hey there everyone, welcome to Drawing Expressions here on YouTube. I'm Parz, and yeah, this is week 4 of the Apothecaria episodic writing program that I've been doing. So welcome. Yeah, let's just kind of dive right into all the stuff that we do. So the first things are the one and only guidelines. They bend, they don't break. Just keep that in mind with anything I say and anything that I don't say. Guidelines bend, rules break. Today, the planner and the pantser section. So the planner is, we're going to be doing the story of the, this is a cure week in week 4. So we get to learn all about necromancers and why you shouldn't interrupt them. And in the pantser section, we're going to be digging a little deeper into the details of things and seeing what we can mine from that stuff. Now let's just move straight into our breathing and our stretching. So I'm going to invite you to sit, get your butt nice and square on your pillow, or if you're standing, standing nice and solid and taking a nice deep breath in. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Deep breath in. And stretch, just a little stretch. Okay. Always enjoy that bit. Feels good. As does this. Okay. Yeah, so here we go. So with the planner section, we just dive straight into the narrative, and then we'll talk about where it came from afterwards. But story time first. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, adult or not, and here we go. I've gotten into the habit of taking a bit of time daily to sit quietly in the cottage and look up at the spirit house I built. And improved. It no longer resembles a lean-to. I won't say it's a proper house, but I'm happy to call what it is currently a house. Or at least resembles a house. Whatever, it's good enough for now. As to why I do this, it's partly because it feels right and respectful. After 3 weeks of banging around, not really knowing what I was doing, but insisting I did know, to the point of nearly dismissing Mouse Eye, I felt a need to reset a bit. The last few days were a good start, and I'm hoping to continue. Another reason is I keep wondering if another letter, maybe from my new bestie Pip, who I'll probably never meet, or maybe from someone else, might arrive at any time. I've never been one for friendships, but for the life of me, I don't understand why I'm so fixated on watching the mail portal. Maybe I'm waiting to see what happens if someone sends something really big. As I sit, my mind does love to wander. Endless speculating, like that idea of a big letter trying to squeeze out from behind my spirit house. But another topic that I've begun to ruminate on is the ramifications of not being able to treat someone, or of having them leaving dissatisfied because I wasn't able to effect a cure or do so quickly enough. To be honest, I've been harboring these thoughts for a little while. Private speculation, but today I saw Mouse Eye was awake and around, so I asked. He twitched his whiskers. It's so cute when he does that. Then shrugged. I know there's a doctor of sorts in High Rannoch. I guess they'd go to him. Of sorts? He shrugged again. I stopped myself from asking why he gave a qualified answer. If Mouse Eye wanted to share, he would. so I internally shrugged back and hit on another topic. There's no doubt there's an underlying spirit or wisdom existing on the grounds, or in the grounds. The wild rose recovering nearly instantly from being trampled, the bees so quickly becoming part of the property, maybe even my ability as an untrained novice to not only recognize but safely collect reagents and then brew them into potions that are effective. Imagine someone using pine bark and bat guano to create a potion that would decrease flatulence. But that's how I feel. Yes, I have the book, and something definitely happened when I read it. A knowledge transference of sorts. Is the old witch somehow still here? Here yet not here? Here inside me? I can't say I'm comfortable at all with that thought. However, I don't feel like there's someone inside me or with me. I feel like my thoughts are mine and not someone else's. But definitely something to keep in mind. Not everything is as it seems. The rest of the day progressed normally. Cooking, cleaning, reading the book, and trying to teach myself about places I haven't been to yet. All the chores that keep a place organized and functioning well. And then, tired, I went to bed. Only to be woken by Mouse Eye with a cryptic message. "Someone needing your help is coming." It took me a second to react, but I did shake off the cobwebs, got dressed, and just started stoking the fire when a wild-eyed man pounded on my door. As I opened it, he fell forward into my living space, all the while looking over his shoulder like he was being chased. His hoarse screams, or more like a rough, breathy, very muted pseudo-screams, were just creepy. What had he seen that had induced such fear and panic? That thought was interrupted by his vomiting onto my floor. Had it been a normal spilling of stomach yuck, that would have been one thing. But when the vomit, instead of simply launching from mouth to floor, formed itself into a little dancing figure that then ran out my door into the night, that was something else. If only it hadn't left little vomit footprints on my formerly clean floor. Anyway, out the door the vomit man went. I stood bemused, and the horseman hoarsely screamed again and tried to hide under my bed. Clearly, I needed more light. Maybe that'd stop the fear reaction. Maybe? A few minutes later, the fire was high enough to provide decent light. The intermittent screaming hadn't stopped, nor had the intermittent vomiting. He'd let loose twice more. One had become a small four-legged creature and hid in my cauldron. Ew. And the other had squeezed under my bed and, I swear this is true, was making faces at the man. With the light up, I could see the panicked white of his eyes, his vivid green skin, and incredibly white hair, which didn't make sense. His body hair, eyebrows, arm hair, facial hair, shadow, were all black. Something had scared him half to death, which helped explain the screaming. But green skin? Vomiting magical vomit? Not a fear reaction. That was more like a poisoning. Dealing with the poisoning was the priority. Without prompt treatment, things could become complicated. Who knows what it was that someone had brewed or that he'd eaten or whatever, and what could result. But there was no doubt, what with the animated vomitus, that he'd been poisoned and it had a magical element. As another vomit creature ran across the floor, I bent down and tried to let my patient know I was going to gather reagents to deal with the poisoning and that we'd tackle the fear reaction next. Maybe dealing with the poison would deal with the other as well. I was hoping. I gathered up my stuff and headed off. At night. To Heroes Hollow. Oh man. Yep, my favorite place in the whole world, and I get to go there in the dark. I tried to be brave. I tried to look up at the stars, and I tried to believe they would look out for me. I tried to remember that the spirit of the cottage hadn't steered me wrong yet, even when I was out of line, and I knew Mouse Eye would be with me and do what he could to keep me safe. Despite all my worry, all my alerting to every shriek and call and snap and more, the thousand sounds the wilderness makes at night, I got to the dungeon safely. The hardest part of the night so far, getting to the hollow, was past. Now to navigate the now hardest part, the dungeon itself. One more round of thoughts towards asking for help and guidance from the cottage, the stars, Mouse Eye, whomever was bothering to listen, and then I entered. The good part about going to the hollow at night is that your eyes don't need to adjust. You go from outdoor dark to indoor dark, which is a different quality of dark, the indoor one being more complete, but dark to dark is fairly easy. I relaxed and made my way into the dungeon. I knew I had to work quickly, so I made my way to where I hoped I could find cold rust. It's a blue rust that feeds on magical artifacts. I was hoping I could find that type of thing in the armory spaces. A rusty magical weapon would be perfect for my uses. As I walked quickly, I started to hear other footsteps. They weren't my steps echoing along corridors. It sounded like a small army. But an army in thick socks. The chest. I spotted it as it turned a corner and ran towards me. It was a happy run, an eager run, a run that hoped I had a treat in my pocket. Feeling far more confident that I had a right to, I patted my pocket and felt a treat there. Thank you, Mouse-Eye. I didn't say it aloud, but I heard him from close by. You're welcome. I gave the treat. It seemed happy, so I took an extra minute to give it some pets and scrunches. I think it purred, so I told it I was here to gather some things and asked if it wanted to help. I think it yapped happily. So we all headed for the armory, where we did indeed find cold rust. One down. Next up was flood bulb. There are two places where you can generally find it, traps that are based on water, and in canteens. Nothing stores water more efficiently. And so despite asking the chest for help and prepared to go wherever it led, I expected we'd go to the kitchens. And we did. It did require some gentle handling. You absolutely don't want a bulb to burst in your pack. As we were leaving the kitchens and heading through the cafeteria/mess hall, I spotted another lucky find. Ghost goo. Apparently, a ghost was spending a lot of time in and around where everyone ate. Maybe it was the ghost of one of the only people ever to have lived that liked mass-produced food. A slop-loving memory? Anyway, for whatever reason, a ghost was leaving bits of goo all over the tables, and so I grabbed it gratefully. We headed back to the dungeon entrance, the chest padding along with Mouse-Eye and I. One more set of scrunches and I was heading back to the cottage. Oh, the reek as I approached. I almost wished it smelled like bog goblin again. Vomit people ran out to meet me. Vomit creatures were running amok in the cottage. It was nasty. Pandemonium. Unbearable. Sir, you have to get your vomit under control. I can't brew in these conditions. He pointed out the door, did another hoarse scream, and out they went. I mopped up the necessary equipment and started prepping. I tossed the cold rust and flood bulb into the mortar and started working them. The water that flooded out of the bulb was more than plenty for my potion. The water that flowed onto my floor would help me clean it later. My patient drank the offered cup. His skin seemed to lighten slightly from a deep green to a more faded one, and thankfully he stopped vomiting. As a side note, I think the vomit people found it in an abandoned gopher tunnel system. I wish them the best. Anyway, with that crisis dealt with, it was time to deal with the root cause of all this. The potion, thankfully, gave my patient enough voice back that, while difficult to understand, was in the end understandable. Not that what he told me was at all sensical. While the number of shrieks decreased and the vomiting stopped, the few words he was able to utter between his screams said only something about a necromancer. Right. So, someone in the local area is doing magic and working with death. Okay, it's easy to see how seeing something, especially if you're unprepared to see something, could give you a terrible fright. And the funny, strange, not haha, bit is that the reagents I need to deal with this are in Hero's Hollow. Oh yay, another trip to that warm and fuzzy place. And have to do with necromancy, vampire venom, and skeleton dust. Or maybe I could simply brew something up involving pine bark and bat guano. Tempting, but no. As I got ready to head out again, I kept an eye on my patient. Still wild-eyed frightened? Yep. Still intermittently screaming? Yep. But for now, anyway, not giving the appearance of being ready to bolt out the door. Sir, it's going to take me a bit of time to address your fright. Please know you are safe here. There's plenty of wood to keep the fire going, keep the cottage warm, and provide lots of light. When I get back, we'll have you feeling calmer, okay? I got a nod. Good enough. And off I went. The sun was just rising. The last bits of low-lying mist were just starting to burn off, revealing dew-draped undergrowth. The land looked magical. I must admit my thoughts drifted to the whole concept of magic. I suppose, for example, the work I do could be seen by some as magic despite my not adding any sort of supernatural anything to my potions. If reagents carry power, then I'll happily use that power, but as far as waving a magic wand over a bubbling cauldron to create some sort of malevolent miasma that would swallow High Ronok just wasn't in the cards. Same with a healing vapor that nightly would take away people's hurts, wounds, even nightmares. Imagine that. A vapor that would help people feel better and healthier. I wondered if something like that could be created. Interesting, but feels more like magical meddling than healing people who ask for help with bespoke potions. Before I knew it, I was back at the Hollows. Now to work through the new challenge of collecting harder reagents. Time to find some vampires. Ugh. Which meant exploring deeper into the dungeon. I made my way deeper in than I'd gone before. I half hoped the walking chest would show up. That would have been comforting. Maybe if I asked, Mouse-eye? I tried to keep the quaver from my voice. You wouldn't happen to know where a vampire is, would you? I love it when he's so forthcoming, in a dark, scary, and frankly horrible place. Are we going the right way? Both good and bad news in my book, both involving getting closer and closer to a vampire. I asked Mouse-eye to keep me on track, and that track felt darker, more musty, and quite dank. Why can't I spend more time in more pleasant places? Glimmerwood Grove is so lovely. The trees, the wildflowers, the... Greetings, mistress. The voice scared the bejeebers out of me. It was behind me, which how in the world did anyone get behind me? But at the same time, the voice was quite calm, almost welcoming. I froze, closed my eyes tightly, somehow that was supposed to bolster my non-existent courage, and turned around slowly. Standing there was a figure. The lack of light made seeing details like the person's face difficult, but the bearing seemed okay. I think a smile was on their face, and I say there because the voice gave nothing away about its sex. All I was getting was polite, patient curiosity. I figured I needed to respond at some point. Hi. Greetings again, mistress. If I may observe, you appear less lost than uncertain. May I help you in some way? Sure. Why not? What could go wrong? Even if Mouse-eye isn't visible, I know he's close. Yes, yes. They didn't react at all to my list slip. I'm looking for a vampire. That caused, I think, eyebrows to rise. It's not common that someone seeks out a vampire. May I inquire your reasons for doing so? I saw no harm in saying I needed a vampire's venom. Ah, so you are a witch then. Excellent. Follow me, please. We walked down another corridor. I'm not sure if I would have spotted it on my own, and arrived at a small room. It had a small table with a couple of chairs in it, a candle that provided a bit of light, and an open book lay in front. Please excuse the mess. Master and I don't get many visitors. Have a seat. I sat down slowly, maybe even warily. Master? I don't mean to be rude, but who is your master? The figure came into the candlelight. Note to self, if my patient saw this person unexpectedly, that could explain their fright. While some features spoke to good-natured friendliness, like the shy smile and the gentle eyes, others were less so. The massive scars and stitching all about their face and head, the third arm sticking out from their chest, and the small knife in that hand. My eyes glued onto it. He looked down. Oh, my apologies. I feel most I feel most comfortable with a scalpel in my hand. This one, however, isn't for surgery. It's my dip pen. He set it down on the table, then he sat in the other chair. It felt menacing, but he seemed to be ignoring it. My master is a vampire. He's currently sleeping. It's been a busy night, and of course, it's now day. So, what is it you need venom for? I told him, definitely a him, about my patient. The scarred man laughed. I think it was good-natured. Sorry, but you must see the humor here. Your patient came down last night. He wanted a reanimated skeleton for some reason. Scared my master most terribly. He just popped out of nowhere, interrupted a delicate piece of magical work, which caused a rather dramatic mess, I'm telling you, and that scared all of us. Master had to scramble to keep the world from imploding. The man fled into my laboratory, and I had to run after him. Master, of course, would want him punished, so I got him to drink a potion that would eventually turn him into a zombie. Temporarily, of course. Anyway, Master called for me, so I had to leave the man to his own devices. Apparently, he ran to you, and now you wish to cure him. Gulp. I hope that's okay with you. Oh, certainly. I bear him no ill will, and like I said, Master only wanted him punished for a little while. Let's see. For a fright, you'll also want skeleton dust, correct? I could only nod. Wonderful. Let me take you to where you can wait. It's the library, of sorts. I think you'll find things of interest there. The library turned out to be quite the space. The room was big and airy, bookshelves lined the walls, and a ready supply of candles meant it would be easy to browse the volumes. As I started to look around, the scarred servant asked, What happened to the old witch? Do you know? No, sorry, I just moved in recently. All there was about her whereabouts was a few lines in a book that she'd written and had open. It said that if I was reading it, she must be either missing or dead. Pity. Martha quite liked her. Oh well. And with that, he was off. And I can't say that I paid much attention to his leaving. The books were drawing my attention. The range of topics was so diverse. How to reanimate anything from an ant to a dragon and all manner of creatures in between. Getting answers to questions by calling on the spirits of the dead. Creating loyal servants through the use of potions, and more. Creating loyal servants? Using potions? Note to self, politely decline any and all offers of beverages. I don't know how long I'd been in there. I was just transfixed. This place was amazing, so full of secrets, knowledge, ancient wisdom. And then I discovered a letter tucked in an unassuming spot between two large volumes detailing the life and times of assorted necromancers from the distant past. It wasn't sealed or anything, so I opened it. I couldn't help but notice that the handwriting was familiar. Very familiar. It was the same as in my book. The old witch had written it. I sat down and read the whole thing. The salutation read, My dearest Count. The letter itself was a goodbye. That she was going to be heading for someplace called the Imperial City, and that trip was bound to be long, dangerous, but entirely necessary. For reasons we've discussed at length and don't bear repeating again. But it was also an invitation that the Count should go to her before she left in the morning. She promised a delightful night by way of goodbye, but that she also understood that accepting that invitation could be too much to ask for. And something about her ambivalence about traveling with Humphrey. I gathered Humphrey was a pet cow. Huh, a cow, as a pet. That was weird. Ah, I see you found her letter. I felt blurry, fuzzy, just deep into all this reading, unnaturally muddled. The old witch would visit the hollow routinely, found all sorts of excuses to stay. One time to give booties to the mimic, another time to recycle metal in the old prison block. Always visiting, always hoping the master would notice her. I just nodded while fighting off the cog fog. And did he notice her? The scarred servant looked pained. Yes, she was a terrible distraction. I feared he'd stop her from leaving or, worse, go with her. So I hid that letter. He thinks he abandoned him, got him good and angry, focused, and he very nearly completed his experiment last night. I was recovering, and nearly imploded the world. He shrugged. There are risks to what he does. Then he added, if it makes you feel any better, you'd never know that it happened. 1 second okay, the next second gone. Uh-huh. Don't argue with the servant of a necromancer. Get what you came for and get out. Do you have the reagents you went to get for me? Don't you want to stay and read some more? The master was looking forward to talking to you. I'm brewing up a lovely tea. Politely decline. Oh, no, thank you. I really need to get back. How long have I been in here? Oh, not long. Oh, well, maybe I could... Which is when I spotted Mouse-Eye sitting on a shelf behind the scarred servant, gesticulating, and loudly gesticulating if gestures could make noise, that I should leave. Just take the reagents from you with gratitude and then head back. He paused for a second, then... The Igor Code requires that I uphold an unsolicited offer, but please promise that you'll pay us a visit some other day. I said I would. Mouse-Eye grimaced, but that seemed to be the only way to get my reagents and leave without further incident. As we made our way back, I asked Mouse-Eye about his reaction. It's okay. You promised to visit both Igor and the vampire, which means it'll have to be at night, when the Count's awake. But we can prepare adequately and keep you safe. But I thought it'd be okay. The old witch may or may not have been manipulated. But the fact that she left of her own accord means she either wasn't magicked or she figured a way out of it. Anyway, it'll be fine. The comforting part of his message was dispelled with his mumbled, I hope. Great. Well, time to worry about that later. I had a panicked patient, probably impatient, waiting. To his credit, he was still waiting at the cottage. White knuckles gripped the table, feet tapped, knees bounced, white hair practically frizzled with electricity. If I didn't know better, it looked like he'd eaten a lot of laxative and was about to lose his battle with the call of nature. Actually, I didn't know better, so I hoped I wouldn't be cleaning up more than sticky vomit prints. It took no time at all to crush the skeleton bone into dust and sprinkle it onto the venom in the bottom of a cup. He drank it down willingly. Within a couple of minutes, the knuckles turned a calmer pink, the feet and knees stopped their incessant movement, his eyes lost their wildness, and his head began to slump onto his chest. And seconds later, he was snoring in my bed. At least someone gets to grab some rest. I stepped outside and began my morning routine. To be frank, I wasn't happy my bed was being used by anyone other than me. Never mind that others may have dozed on it while I was working, and that the old witch most certainly used it prior to my moving in, but still. And yet, to be fair, with what he'd been through, no doubt he was tired. And then I realized he'll probably be ravenous when he wakes. So, time to prepare food for two, which also means he spends more time here. As I got back to work, I thought about my thoughts about this prolonged visit, and how much I didn't like it. The intrusion into my life here was something I simply disliked, but I'd manage today. Be polite, be professional, be sympathetic, but gently insistent that he leave. I didn't get my chance to be all that for several hours, but he did finally emerge looking much calmer and relaxed. And, as predicted, he was hungry. I thought it'd be a great opportunity to hear his story, or at least the reasons behind his story. After all, I already knew where he'd been when things went bad. I wanted to know the why. It took nothing to get him talking. I started to pry and he just opened up. I don't believe I've properly introduced myself last night. Cornelius McTwitter, physician to the town of Iranock. Pleased to make your acquaintance. My apologies for the state I was in last night, completely unprofessional on my part, and to think it was all from my attempt to purchase a skeleton, reanimated skeleton, no better kind to have in a medical office. I can have it point out to my patients the parts of the body affected when dealing with medical issues. By the way, I noticed you seem to be lacking a reanimated skeleton. I agreed that I didn't possess one. He nodded in acknowledgement. In fact, I don't see that you have much of an establishment at all. No books, no laboratory equipment. How do you properly examine someone's urine without a laboratory? I don't see the need. For instance, I cured you of your afflictions and didn't need to use any equipment. And you have no leeches. How can you balance humors without bleeding a patient? I just smiled and said, again, I cured you without them. He looked indignant. But certainly you just got lucky, or I was already on the mend. I was getting testy. You were on your way to becoming a zombie because you interrupted a necromancer in the middle of a magical spell, and his Igor handed you a potion that was a poison that you drank. Now, really, that's too much. I mean, yes, I did go to see the gentleman, and he did look busy, but how else do you arrange to purchase a reanimated skeleton? It's not like he consigns them through bits and bobs. That gentleman is a vampire. Oh, pish. Nonsense. Vampire indeed. That was vampire venom you just drank. He scoffed. Probably something completely innocuous, like a wildflower root. Witches have all sorts of scary-sounding names for not scary things. Right. I was done. Well, I'm glad to see you have an appetite again, so if you don't mind, I do have things I need to tend to, like cleaning up little vomit people footprints. And I'm sure your clinic needs its doctor back. Oh, yes, didn't realize it was getting on in the day. What do I owe you? Since these were more serious conditions, I increased my price. 30 silver for each cure, 60 total. The lunch I threw in for free. The hours of scrubbing my cottage clean of the ravages of last night's chaos would help me release my rage at his ignorance. He didn't blink as he laid the money on the table. Right, a very good day to you. And with that, he left, and I breathed a sigh of relief. And that is the end of the episode. And now, let's take a minute or two to breathe and stretch. So, again, sit nicely and deep breath in and stretch. Perfect. Okay, well, that was quite the story. I hope you think so. Let's talk about the bits and pieces, the bits and bobs that come together to put it together. So again, it's the same thing as every time that I talk about this. It's the creative mixing bowl with our guidebook prompts, what's been written before, or where are we right now, and then the imagination. So the first thing I'm going to show you, that side, is the prompts. I'm just going to pop that up. There we go. So take a second right there, grab your screenshot, and we'll talk about some of the details inside of here. Okay, perfect. Here. Okay, so there's a bunch of things to talk about with the prompts. So I'll just go through them quickly, I hope. So the first thing to note is the ailments. They have different levels of difficulty, 4 levels. And which table you pull from is guided by what is your reputation score, and that is guided by the number of times that you have successfully cured. And if you don't cure or you suffer consequences for some reason, you can also get knocked down in reputation. So as of the playing when Alicia and I did it on this day, we had a reputation of 10. And we had done, so that still puts you at the basic, the novice level ailments. It's 11 or up to 20 that puts you into the next level. We decided we'd had enough of the simple and let's just kick it up a notch. So we did. So if you're following along in the book, that is why we're in the next level. I think it's intermediate, I think. But yeah, we're in the level 2 ailments. So regarding ailments, we drew, the first one was potion poison. And the detail for potion poison, it says that the patient drank an ill-advised potion from someone. Yeah, like some peddler on the road or whatever. So they turn green, their vomit runs away. So those are sort of your keys to knowing what it is. So we looked at that and said, okay, why would someone drink a potion? Maybe they suffered for something already. And so they go and they get this potion and the potion poisons them. And that's where we drew our second prompt, which was a terrible fright, also in the one level up. Because why not go a little crazy with these things? So yeah, so we actually had the two ailments, and they go together really, really nicely. Having potion poison, it does make sense. You know, what was the cause of someone wanting to drink a potion that was ill-advised? The consequence of not curing a terrible fright is that they run off and maybe are never seen again. So we figured that, at least in my story, the terrible fright occurred in Hero's Hollow, and the running occurred, right? He drank the potion poison, but he ran. So that's the consequence. And so technically speaking, we were going to be consequence-free with a terrible fright. So we were able to do it second, but we still only used the timer for this. And timer on a terrible fright is 6. So we only took 6 actions for it. And the potion poison, the timer's 4. And so that's why we figured, okay, this one's a little bit more immediate. So yeah, so that's how we sort of decided on the order of how we were going to handle it and why we were able to handle it sequentially and not consecutively. Okay, so in Apothecaria, there are, you know, very high levels of reputation where you're handling very high level, very difficult cures, and you can take on 2 at the same time. And if you cure them, because they run consecutively, and the timer ends on, you know, the shorter of the 2, so they run consecutively, and you get bonuses if you are able to cure in time. Since we're nowhere near that yet, we ran them sequentially, and just use the timer for each one. We meet the Mimic again, and remember that with the Mimic, if you meet and feed the Mimic 3 times, he becomes your limited familiar pal wherever you go. So we're at time number 2, and so he's more friendly, but he's not with us yet. One more go, and then we'll have the Mimic as the limited use familiar. Another prompt is that we learn about a letter that the old witch sent, but was never received. And we also learn about her pet. And so I thought, well, let's combine them. All right, let's have some mention of her pet and put that into the letter. And because originally I had thought, wouldn't it be, you know, funny to have like something big like a cow or an elephant or something like that as a familiar, I popped it in here so that she had a pet cow. So it just seemed to make sense to put it in there. Because we opted to use vampire venom and skeleton dust as reagents, I decided to really lean into that, because you have to sort of negotiate with a vampire in order to get the vampire venom. So I said, well, why don't we put the vampire sort of at the center of things in terms of this cure and the activities of the night. And so I think it worked really, really well. And since we also had skeleton dust, I said, well, let's have this vampire be a necromancer. I mean, that kind of makes sense. And it's so much easier, yeah, if these two things, we just combine it into one thing. So a vampiric necromancer, it just makes sense. So the last thing I wanted to mention on here is about the trap. So in the guidebook, the trap is listed as being something that wounds you or otherwise causes you hurt. And I thought, well, let's change that up a bit. And use the library as the trap and let that take time and kind of, suck some time away. And in this case, it's going to be trying to take away your cognitive abilities, using that as like a mental trap. And it seemed to make a lot of sense with the library and having all of that kind of working together. Okay, so now let's talk about what was written before. And then using that as prompts for this particular episode. So first off, the Spirit House, it continues to develop. Yeah, so I don't think it goes much further than where it is right now, but it is a little hand construction thing that Mistress Sweetwater has put together. Heroes Hollow has become more scary. And this one makes sense because we have 4 open locations right now, right? We have the forest, which sounds benign and lovely. The mountains, who doesn't like going to the mountains? And like the lock, it's like it's got the beach and the ocean, and then the dungeon. Which one of those 4 sounds the most scary? So, yeah, and besides, she was locked into a jail cell, and, there's little tricks and traps and dust and must, and if you're going to have something that's scary, it's going to be the dungeon. Okay, so another piece here is Mousei doesn't show up when other people are around, and if he does show up, well, I shouldn't say that he doesn't show up when no one's around, because he does. It's just he's never in view. So is he real? Is he not? Is he a figment of her imagination? What is he exactly? We can play with that. And so that's part of what is this continuing theme with Mousei. Also, Mousei doesn't share information well. And even when clarity would be welcome, even in scary places where clarity would be really welcome, he's not a good sharer. He's a good watcher, but a good relator? No, not so much. No, I just like to watch. Yeah. I like to watch as you want to pull your hair out and scream because you're frustrated because I'm not answering any of your questions. And the last thing to mention here is that Sweet put booties onto the Mimic's feet an episode or 2 back. They're still on there. And so, yeah, we had to have the 100 little softly padded feet of the Mimic with wearing thick socks. Little baby booties. So let's talk about the imagination piece. So if we have a vampiric necromancer in a dungeon, who else might be there? Well, you usually have some sort of helper, and Igor actually shows up a lot in movies and books and whatnot. So I decided that I wanted to reach for an Igor. And in this case, this is Igor as Terry Pratchett kind of sort of wrote Igor. In Terry Pratchett's books in the Discworld series, Igors are traditionalists. They are the ones who make sure that the door hinges, that they creak properly. They make sure that there's the spider webs, that there's plenty of them in all the right places. They do the stuff to make sure that everyone knows that it's supposed to be a scary place. My Igor, a little bit more of a not quite sure just yet. But the speech pattern is quite on there. The thing about the Igor is that they are the helpers of their masters or mistresses. So that is how Terry writes his, or Terry Pratchett writes his Igors, and so I thought I would just grab that. I love the sound of the way that Igors speak, and so I decided to use it. A bit of fan fiction. Okay, so we had the doctor, the patient, and his vomit. First off, he was vomiting profusely, and it was running away. So what happens if you have a lot of vomiting? Well, you get a lot of running around by a lot of vomit creatures, and you get a vomit community. And where do they go after the cure is done, after it's been effected? And I suppose one way to look at it would be like they mysteriously disappear because the curse has been broken. I decided to keep them around, and they went off. And yeah, so Mistress Sweetwater supposes they end up in some sort of like a warren, or a den of some sort. So anyways, yeah, they're out there living, and yeah, and they will come back. Yay. The last thing I wanted to mention here is that I'm leaning more and more into the idea that inside the town is kind of rationality and science and things of the more modern world. And things outside are more natural and how things really are. So inside the town, you sort of deny reality a bit. Oh, there couldn't possibly be a vampiric necromancer living in the dungeon. Really? Really? And with High Rannoch being as run down as it is, it's porous, so it has space and gaps for these outside ideas to kind of come in, and there's some discomfort and whatnot. If you were to go to the Imperial City, where it's all marble or stone and paved, and nature is tamed and whatnot, would we have as much of the wildness that is out here in High Rannoch? No, you wouldn't. At least not in my world. No, because that's going to be very denying of things. It's yeah, we have this differentiation between the inside towns and the outside. Okay, welcome to the Pantser section. So we're going to be doing a couple of quick discussions here. And it's really getting into the details of things. Digging a little deeper into the details. So let's first off look at digging into the details on prompts. So when you pull a prompt, maybe it'll make more sense by following up with asking, what if? What if you get potion poison? What would cause it? What if there was something else? What if we could follow up with that? And so you can expand on a question like that by pulling another prompt. There's nothing that says that you can only do one environmental prompt. Alicia and I were trying to go prompt light, and so we're trying to keep as much room open for story as possible. That does not mean, however, that we can't pull a extra prompt, where having one would be helpful to us into writing our stories. And this episode was definitely a case where it was helpful to fully flesh out the potion poison, where it came from. So instead of simply taking a prompt at face value, ask, is there anything that would help it make more sense, or that would make it more entertaining, or that would make the story more engaging? So let's dig a little bit deeper into the details of what has been written before, or details within the things that we're doing that will help flesh the story out a little bit. So the doctor is often listed as a consequence of a failed cure. So if you have an ailment with a timer, so potion poison, why not? We'll just use that. Potion poison, and you fail to cure the potion poison in time. the consequence oftentimes is the patient will go to the doctor who's in town. So why would anyone bother to come out of the town, walk down the path, and then come to the witch's cottage when they can just go around the corner to the doctor? So I decided to explore that a bit. And yeah. Another thing that we looked at was using a reagent, in this case, vampire venom, and expanding that into an entire piece of story. So in order to get to the vampire venom, you needed a vampire. In order to have the vampire, how do you get there? And, you've got the Igor and then the whole dungeon thing. And yeah, so it becomes quite expansive simply because we opted to use vampire venom. Had I gone with a different reagent, story would be completely different. And by the way, this storyline continues for several episodes, or at least mentions it for several episodes going forward. So it is one of those things where it was just this happy little accident that because of one reagent, multiple episodes are now beneficially affected. And also keep in mind that looking at the details on things, it also applies to details within prompts and changing them to make them more interesting or have them make more sense. So for instance, looking at the trap. So again, the trap was supposed to be an ouchie trap. I chose to make it a mental trap. So taking that opportunity to have the effect be the same, in other words, your timer gets affected by -2, but otherwise the way it accomplishes that, I do it in a much different fashion than what's suggested in the guidebook, but they both work. And for my story, it works a lot better to have that mental trap than to have a physical trap. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode, this video. Total pleasure to read to you and explain to you how I was putting it together. And I hope that I will see you back here in another 2 weeks. So until then, bye for now.